Hello everyone, this is Mike Anderson of Collision and Vice. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Our webinar this month for Learn to Research and Research to Learn is on utilizing Volkswagen's erWin website. Please keep advised or be advised that all participants have been muted. However, questions are encouraged. At any time during this webinar, if you have a question you'd like to ask, please text your question to my counterpart and teammate, Tracy Dombrowski, at 571-458-0648. Now, when you submit a question to Tracy, please identify your name and if you're from a shop, what shop you are. In addition, this webinar will run probably about 80 to 90 minutes, and we understand that you may have to step away. So this webinar will be recorded, and we will be making this webinar available on our Collision and Vice YouTube channel for free to the entire industry. We'd also like to thank Volkswagen for their support and contributions to helping us to build the content for this webinar, as well as to Sika for all the efforts they do for the collision repair industry. Now, keep in mind again, any questions that you submit, I, Mike Anderson of Collision and Vice, will attempt to answer for you. However, if you have some questions that are specific for Volkswagen or the team at Volkswagen, we will be providing those questions to Volkswagen, and they will follow up with you personally with a response. Keep in mind again, any questions you have, please text to Tracy at 571-458-0648. With that said, let's get started. We'd like to give a special thanks to Travis Traylor, who is a service compliance specialist with Volkswagen, as well as Bill Garrett, who is the wholesale parts operation manager. Both of these gentlemen are on our webinar today as a panelist. We'd also like to give a special thanks to Warren Barbie, who could not join us because he's conducting some Volkswagen training today at their training center in Virginia, but he was very helpful in his contributions. We always have to start every webinar out with antitrust guidelines. It is understood that in today's session, we will not discuss any issues that would violate antitrust guidelines. Avoiding violations of the antitrust laws is the responsibility and legal obligation of the business owner, and any discussion of current prices or discounts with a competitor should be avoided. In our industry, this includes discounts, time hourly rates, charges to insurance companies, individuals, fleet owners, dealers, or other shops that repair vehicles. Remember, surveys of prices, discounts, and cost are permissible, but only under strict guidelines and only if they're not part of a conspiracy to fix prices or to otherwise restrain trade. Cost studies that would lead to price fixing or price stabilizing agreements would violate both the United States and Canadian antitrust laws. So remember, the prices that you charge must be calculated and determined by you, the business owner or manager alone. And these prices should always take into account the cost of doing business and include allowances for a reasonable profit. All content of this webinar today is based on standard economic and management principles. Profit margins, labor rates, etc. used in this presentation are to be taken as examples only. And the intent of this workshop and webinar today is to provide you, the attendee, with basic management skills, leaving you free to determine your own individual rates, profit percentages, and other operating management aspects of your business on a strictly independent basis using generally accepted management principles. So now that we got that out of the way, let's jump right into our webinar. You know, back in 2017, many of you may be aware that I, Mike Anderson of Collision and Vice, in conjunction with John Yazwick of the Crash Network, we do surveys of collision repair shops across the United States. And one of the questions we often ask shops around the country is, how frequently do you research home repair procedures at the time you write an estimate? Now, in 2015, when we first started these surveys, only about 16% of all shops said they researched home repair procedures all the time. However, that has grown to 24.8% for this year. Ladies and gentlemen, this is still very concerning to us because we should absolutely be researching home repair procedures every single time we write an estimate, not most of the time or some of the time or occasionally. In addition, in our surveys, we often ask shops, what methods do you use to research home repair procedures? And you'll see that 72% of shops are said they're using a software solution called AllData, 54% of the shops said we go to iCar, and 52% of the shops use the OEM manufacturers' websites directly. So it's our goal today to educate you on how to utilize Volkswagen's erWin to ensure a safe and proper repair. Now, our desired outcome is to raise awareness with you of the resources that Volkswagen offers you and teaches you to research home repair procedures. We're going to review the requirements of registering on the erWin website, as well as how to log in and navigate and use their website from a collision repair perspective. We're also going to show you a couple other things that Volkswagen offers in regards to their Otis scan tool and as well as their erWin newsletter. We're also going to discuss a little bit about where people often contact us and say, Mike, Volkswagen doesn't have a position statement on scanning. I can't get an insurer to pay for it. Well, we're going to show you today how to find that information within erWin. And last but not least, we're also going to address very quickly a little bit of the aspects for you of the Volkswagen certification program. Now, keep in mind, if you have any questions, please text those to Tracy at 571-458-0648. Now, we'd like to start off our webinar by beginning to do a little bit of a polling question. So my counterpart, Tracy, is going to launch a poll right now. What segment best represents your role in the collision repair industry? For those of you that are on our webinar live right now, would you please take a moment to take the poll? Are you a collision repair center? Are you an equipment like paint jobber, distributor, or car liner, or Celette, or something like that, equipment distributor, or spray boot distributor? Or are you an insurance executive? Or do you actually work for an OEM or other? So if you would take just a moment, we're going to go ahead and ask you if you would take that poll. Currently, it looks like only 12% of our members and attendees have voted, so if everyone would please take a moment to take the poll. Looks like right now we have about 90% of our attendees are collision repair centers. About 2% of our attendees are from equipment, paint, job, or distributor. 1% are insurance industry representatives, 3% from the OEM, and 7% other. So it looks like about 80% of our attendees have taken the poll, so we'll go ahead and close the poll out for now. Also, if someone in the background could just mute their phone for a moment, would be appreciated. Our second polling question, for those of you that are on our webinar today, is that if you are a collision repair representative, are you a Volkswagen certified collision center? So Tracy, if you would please launch that poll. So it looks like currently about 27 to 30% of the attendees on this webinar are actually Volkswagen certified, and about 70% are not. That's great news for us to know. So thank you if you are a Volkswagen certified shop. So Tracy, we can go ahead and stop the poll. So ladies and gentlemen, the first thing we're going to cover is how do you access Volkswagen's OEM repair procedures? Well, first of all, Volkswagen has a very dedicated website. And that website you will see right here is erwin.volkswagen.com, or they abbreviate it erwin.vw.com. Now, Volkswagen's website is a pay-to-use website, and we're going to walk you through the different subscription options here in just a moment. Now, the first thing you want to do is when you go to this website link, you want to go to where it says About erWin, and you will see the first option here says Step-by-Step. Volkswagen makes it very, very easy to register to utilize their erWin website. Now, when you select this option, Step-by-Step, you'll see they actually lay it out for you in 8 simple steps. The first is you must set up an erWin account. Now, there's a couple things you need to know about using erWin. First of all, if you use older versions of Acrobat Reader, it could result in issues with opening up some of the PDFs that you're going to view of the OEM repair procedures. Also, one of the things we did find is that we use different browsers to open up erWin. It will allow you to access it, but some of the hyperlinks will not work. So we encourage you to make sure that you use Internet Explorer. Now, this is really, really important because I will tell you, when I started using this website, I was like, why doesn't this hyperlink work? And what I found out is because I wasn't in Internet Explorer. So again, other browsers may work, but are not officially supported. So again, step 1 is to set up your erWin account. So what's going to happen is when you go to set up your erWin account, you're going to select where it says registration. Once you do that, you're going to get an email with a temporary password for your initial login. Once you go and log into erWin, you can then customize your password to whatever it is you want so it's easy to remember. Now, if you're from Canada or somebody from Mexico by chance, understand you will only be able to register using your country and your zip code, because all it allows you to do is, if you're in the United States, is it allows you to select a shop for a specific state. Now, keep in mind, the Canadian zip code has the following pattern, like for example, A1A. Now, once we go ahead and we get our temporary password and we go and we log back in, we're going to go to step 3. And what's going to happen is, if it's your first time logging in, you'll be redirected to the registration page. And that's where, again, it generates your password of your choice so that you can actually come up with a password. From there, we will go to step 6. And that's where you're going to go. Keep in mind, setting up an erWin account is free. Setting up an erWin account is free. but subscribing to the service information is where the charge is at. So what's going to happen is once you get your erWin account set up, you put your username and password in and you log in. From there, you're going to go to My Account. So you'll see that little red arrow up in the top right corner. Once you select the My Account option, you will then have the option to go to where it says Subscriptions. Now, what we really liked about Volkswagen's OEM repair procedures is they will allow you to subscribe to it for just a single day at a rate of $35. You can also subscribe to erWin, and keep in mind, these are all United States subscription charges. We cannot speak for Canada. But a one-day subscription is $35, 1 month is $250, or a one-year subscription is $1,500. Now, if you are a United States Volkswagen certified shop, then this subscription service is included in your fees. So when you go to select a one-year subscription, you will actually get a credit applied to your account, so you will not be charged for it. Now, one of the things I like about this is that, let's say that you only do a Volkswagen every now and then. Well, you know what? You don't have to subscribe to it for the whole year. You can subscribe to it for just that single day. Now, once we go ahead and log in, you'll see on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see my username, Mike Anderson, and I've put my password in. So then I go ahead and log in. Now, I got to tell you, one of the things that blew me away that Volkswagen does is they take safe and proper repairs very seriously. And you say, well, Mike, why do you say that? It's because I don't care whether you've logged into erWin one time or 1,000 times. The first thing you're going to see when you log into erWin is this little disclaimer of liability right here. And it's going to say use of technical information. And it has some warnings and some cautions that you need to be familiar with. And you will have to select OK no matter how many times you've logged in. So at the end of the day, Volkswagen takes safe and proper repairs very seriously. So what once we do is we'll select the OK option. And once it does that, it opens up erWin for us. Now, let's talk a little bit about what are the different search features on erWin. Now, when you log into erWin, and you'll see right here on the right-hand side, it says info, logged in as Mike Anderson. This tells you how many days, even down to the hours and minutes, your subscription is actually still going to be good for. So it tells me that, for example, in this case, I've been subscribed to erWin for approximately 4 or 5 days, and so I have 360 days, 5 hours, and 45 minutes left in my subscription. This is great so that you make sure you don't run out on your subscription. Now, once I go and log into erWin, one of the things I'm going to do is you'll see here on the home screen, it does say click here for genuine Volkswagen parts information. And so that you can click on that, and it lets you know if Volkswagen's running any specials on any type of parts for price matching or conquesting. But in this purpose today, we're talking about how to access the OEM repair procedures to ensure a safe and proper repair. So what you will do is you will select the tab that says Service Information. Now, once I select Service Information, you'll see it's going to give me 3 different search options. The first search option is the guided search. This allows you to find documents on how to repair that vehicle, as well as wiring diagrams, etc., based on that very specific model, year of that vehicle, and then based off of categories. And we're going to share with you a little bit about categories in a moment. So I would probably use this if I did not have the VIN number on a Volkswagen. So let's say that I was trying to find something on the fly. I didn't know the VIN number right off the top of my head, but I knew it was a Volkswagen Jetta or a Golf or Passat. I would probably use guided search. So in this instance, we'll select guided search. Now, once I select guided search, the first thing I will do is I will select the model year. So in this case, you'll see that I selected a 2018. The next thing that's going to come up is it's going to tell me what model Volkswagen do I want. Now, if you know the VIN number and you logged in and you went through the search for vehicle identification number, it's going to select the specific Volkswagen Golf you have because it decodes the VIN and knows what type of Golf you have. But if you're doing a guided search and you're like, I don't know the VIN number, and you're like, well, which of these Golfs do I choose? Well, what's going to happen is you're going to click on this right here where it says the build guide. So you're going to see right there where I have the red arrow and it says build guide. Once I go and select the build guide, you will see that now it shows me all of these different Volkswagens and it shows me the years of the Volkswagens. And in this instance, it tells me that the model code or the build guide that I need is AU2. So that tells me that's the specific Golf I want to look up versus if I go down here and I see an e-Golf or a Golf R. So again, whenever you do the guided search and you don't know the VIN number, you need to make sure that you select the build guide so it will tell you which Golf you should select if there's multiple models of that specific Volkswagen for that specific year. So this is a great feature, and I appreciate it that Warren Barbie shared this with us. Now, once you go and select the model of Volkswagen you want, you'll see that Volkswagen has Category 1 and Category 2. One of the mistakes that I made when I first started using erWin is I would select, for example, Category 1 Repair Manual, and then I would hit search and nothing would come up. And the reason it wasn't is because I wasn't selecting the Category 2 option. So what's going to happen, the section of erWin that you're probably going to live in the most, the one that you're going to access the most in the collision repair industry, is going to be the Repair Manual section. Now, there are obviously other things in here, such as special tools information. That's where you're going to find information about the Otis scan tool with Volkswagen. Wiring diagrams, that's where you're going to find wiring diagrams, and I'm sure everybody knows what that means. It's kind of self-explanatory. But the area that you're going to live in the most is going to be the Repair Manual. So that's going to be my Category 1. Now, from there, it drops down to Category 2. This is where I'm going to drill into specific sections of the Repair Manual. You'll see here that Category 2 gives me options like drivetrain, electrical system, chassis. The area that you're probably going to live in the most, again, is going to be the body. For Category 2 will be the body selection. Now, again, if I'm working on the air conditioner or heating unit, like the radiator, then I'm obviously going to choose heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. But again, where you're going to live at 90% of your time is going to be the Repair Manual for Category 1 and body for Category 2. Now, once you go and you hit search, what it's going to do is it's going to bring up a screen just like you see right here. And you'll see that on this specific Volkswagen, it gives me several options. You'll see body exterior, body interior, body repair, body collision repair. Now you're going to say, well, Mike, it's showing body collision repair there twice. Is that an error? No, it's not. It means that Volkswagen has a lot of content, and what they've done is they've broken this down into 2 different repair manuals for you, and each one will cover different issues or questions that you may have. And then you're going to see where it says body repairs with an S, and that's also going to have different content. So when you see this where it says body repair, body collision repair, and you see it twice, it's not an error. It's set up that way from Volkswagen. You also see that they have 2 sections on paint, one of which is paint. The other one is paint general information. And in today's webinar, we're going to walk you through what each of these individual sections will allow you to do. Now, if we decide that we know the VIN number, which I will tell you now, that if you can search by VIN number, that's going to be your most thorough, best search, okay? So vehicle identification number is probably my favorite because it narrows the OEM repair procedures down to that specific VIN for me. Your second option is going to be a guided search. Your third option would be a manual search. And while it is an option and we appreciate Volkswagen offering that, I would encourage you to try to either use the VIN search or the guided search. But let's say, for example, we know the VIN number. So really, we should be researching on repair procedures the same time we're writing an estimate in real time. So in this instance, I know the VIN number, and I put the VIN number in for the Volkswagen. Well, what's going to happen is once I do that, I still have to select a Category 1. So you'll see in Category 1, I select a repair manual. In Category 2, I selected body. Now, when these icons pull up for me in these sections below, you're going to notice that one of these says PDF. So the PDF allows me to download that PDF directly to my desktop. If you look at the icon right below the word PDF, so where my cursor is at, that's going to be like a view only option, right? So at the end of the day, you can view it on your screen, or you can download the document to your desktop so you actually have it to reference in the future. I encourage you to download the PDF to your desktop. And here's why. Number one is then you can print it out and give it to your technicians when they're fixing the vehicle. Number two, when you download it as a PDF, you can now save that as a document to your management system so that if there's ever any questions in the future about how you repaired that vehicle, you can say, here's how I was instructed by Volkswagen to fix this vehicle at this date and time in history. So again, Volkswagen does make it where you can just view it on the screen and just scroll down and see what you want. But what I encourage you to do is download the PDF to your desktop and then save it in your management system. Now, let's go ahead and look at the next option. First of all, once I did is I downloaded the PDF to my desktop, okay? Now, here's what I thought was really, really awesome, is even when you download it to your desktop, it works just like if you're reviewing it online. Now, one of the things you'll see that Volkswagen does is as soon as you open up any of their documents, it says right here, repairs may only be performed by trained personnel. Please always use the special tools as listed for all repairs, and you have to select OK. So even if you download it to your desktop as a PDF, and you open it up 10 times in one day, you're always going to have to select this option that says, okay, that you're reading this. Again, I think that is just another big win for Volkswagen, where they're really concerned that their Volkswagens are repaired safely and properly. Now, once you select OK, you're going to see right here, it took me automatically to page 348. Now, I got to tell you, when I was first using this and it took me to 348, I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to go to page 1. And I kept trying to scroll up, and it kept kicking me back to page 348. And I was like, what in the world's going on here? So I called my good friend Bill Garrett over at Volkswagen. I said, Bill, man, what's going on here, buddy? You know, I'm keep trying to go to page 1, and it's not letting me. And he goes, Mike, that's because with Volkswagen, we take things very seriously. And what I did, and I appreciated Bill and Warren sharing that with me, and I said, you know what? Maybe it keeps kicking me back to page 38 because it wants me to read these cautions and warnings. So what I did is I started reading these. And you'll see right here, there were a couple that I pointed out. So it says, let's look right here at the first one. It says, if you lack the skills, tools, and equipment, or a suitable workshop for any procedure described in this manual, we suggest you leave such repairs to an authorized Volkswagen retailer or other qualified shop. It also says right here, bullet point number 2, disconnect the battery negative terminal or the ground strap whenever you work on the fuel system or the electrical system. It also says down here, bullet point number 3. Now catch this one. This is really awesome, right? Anytime the battery has been disconnected on an automatic transmission vehicle, it will be necessary to reestablish the transmission control module, TCM basic settings, using the scan tool. So now for all of you out there that says, hey, Volkswagen doesn't have a position statement on scanning, you're right, they don't. But look what it says here. As soon as I open up these OEM repair procedures, it says if I disconnect the battery, I need to hook the scan tool up to the vehicle. Also, look down here at the bottom bullet point. It says do not reuse any fasteners that are worn or deformed in a normal use. And some fasteners are designed to be used only once and are unreliable and may fail if used a second time. So Volkswagen's telling us, you know what, hey, we've got some parts that are non-reusable, and you need to look for that in the OEM repair procedures. So I read this, and then I went to the next page. Once I did that, I saw a lot of other cautions and warnings. Here's another one that I saw down here. It said, before doing any electrical welding on vehicles, so before we ever weld on a vehicle, right, which happens quite often in the collision repair industry, on vehicles equipped with anti-lock brakes, ABS, we have to disconnect the battery first. So again, Volkswagen's saying, hey, before you ever weld on a vehicle, make sure you disconnect the battery. But you know what? Volkswagen doesn't just have one. They have about 3 or 4 pages of cautions and warnings that I need to read. Now, what happens is once I review all of these, I will now go through and I will click the OK button, the OK option. Now, again, let me tell you about a user error that I made, right? I was using an internet browser other than Internet Explorer, and I kept trying to click on this green box so that I could go ahead and go back to the rest of the document, and it wouldn't allow the OK option to select. That's when I found out it's really important that I use Internet Explorer. So if you ever go to click this box and it doesn't work, it's probably because you're using a browser that's not really compatible with Volkswagen's erWin. So once I went ahead and I selected this OK option, it now took me to the very first page of this specific section, which in this case is body repairs. Now I got to tell you something else that's cool about Volkswagen. You know what? I got to tell you, I've been on a lot of shops. I've worked with a lot of insurance companies and also collision repairers, and I've also used third-party OEM repair procedures. One of the things I found is that the way you will know that you're actually in fact looking at a Volkswagen factory document is you're going to see this cute little guy right here in the middle of the page, right? This cute little guy right here, that's how you know when you look at that you're actually looking at a Volkswagen factory document. So if somebody ever provides you a document and it doesn't have that little cute guy on there, I can tell you it's not a Volkswagen factory repair procedure. Now, once I go into this body repair section, and we're using this as an example, you're going to see a table of contents. Now, one of the things I like about this with Volkswagen is every one of these sections in the table of content is actually a hyperlink. So if I say, look, I don't need to look through all this stuff like gap dimensions, I'm just looking for something specific, I can actually select any of these and it'll take me right to that specific section. Now, again, let me tell you, there was an instance where I was trying to click on one of these hyperlinks and it wouldn't work. Guess why it wouldn't work? Because I wasn't in Internet Explorer. So if it doesn't work 9 times out of 10, I'm telling you, it's user error. You got to be in Internet Explorer. So let's give you an example of some of the information you might find in this body repair section. So in this case, we selected molded foam parts. Now, what we did is when we went in here, we saw this was in section 4, we saw some really cool things. We see here that Volkswagen uses a lot of foams in regards to the designs and the build of their vehicle. And one of the things that Volkswagen said is that they have very specific part numbers for very specific foams. So here's what I really found about Volkswagen. I don't care whether it's undercoating, seam sealer, weld-through primer, even body filler, ladies and gentlemen, Volkswagen has very specific products they want you to use on their vehicles because they have tested these products. So you'll see here, for example, it says, hey, there's some foam that's in this center pillar area near the rocker where the little purple is at. What's telling me that there's a very specific part number on that foam, and I can order that directly from Volkswagen. Now, I think this is great. Why? Because now I have an invoice to provide to an insurer that says this is the part that I used, and it makes it easier for reimbursement. You also see here that Volkswagen says do not perform any gas shielding welding within 15 millimeters next to the molded foam part. So what happens is if I'm working in this area and I'm replacing a rocker or center pillar, I must remove that foam before I do my repairs. Why? Because it's flammable. Now keep in mind, one other thing that all 3 estimating systems say, CCC, Mitchell, and Autotex all say that the removal of any tar, grease, or petroleum-based product is a not included operation. So if your technician has to replace a center pillar and rocker, or you'll see in this instance where you might replace a quarter panel and it tells you there's foam up here on the sail panel, your technician will need to remove that because it's flammable. So that is a not included operation. So again, one of the great things about Volkswagen is they give us very specific part numbers. And ladies and gentlemen, this is a Volkswagen part number, okay? And you need to be using the parts and ordering these from your Volkswagen dealership. Now, here's another thing we found in the body repair manual was something called high strength and highest strength hot form body panels. When you go into this section of the body repair manual, Volkswagen identifies you by color code what their metals are made out of. So you'll see on this specific Volkswagen Jetta right here, it tells me that when I'm going through their own repair procedures, anytime I see a part that is yellow, that is high strength steel, and it is between 300 to 590 MPa. It also tells me that if I see anything in this body repair manual that is red, then that is ultra high strength steel, and it's greater than 1400. Now, why is this important? Because we know that anything above 980 cannot be repaired. So if you're writing an estimate on something and Volkswagen's erWin shows this part to be blue or red in this specific Volkswagen, I cannot repair that part. I need to replace it. And then Volkswagen's going to have very specific replacement guidelines on that component. Now, let me give you a little word of caution, right? On this specific Volkswagen Jetta 2015, red is the color used to identify steel that is greater than 1400 MPa. But let's say, for example, I'm writing an estimate on a Volkswagen Beetle. Red could mean something different in that Beetle than it does in this Jetta. So let me say this again, right? These colors are for this specific vehicle based off of this specific VIN number. The colors could be different in other models. So make sure you don't just start assuming that all yellow is this or all red is this. It's important you check every single vehicle every single time. Now, again, one of the other great things about Volkswagen is Volkswagen has some really good kind of 3D drawings or renderings within erWin. You'll see right here that it's showing me that this roof aperture, the inner reinforcement as well as the center pillar, is actually, their highest form of steel. So if that component's damaged, I must replace it. So again, Volkswagen is very, very good about color coding things. But again, quick word of caution, the colors will vary based on the vehicle you're writing an estimate on. Not all colors will be the same. Now, what else was in this body repair manual? Gap dimensions. One of the things Volkswagen is really good about is very specific tolerances. We know that, most of your European manufacturers, such as Volkswagen, are going to have very strict tolerances in regards to their sheet metal, in regards to the way that the deck lid and the quarter panel align or the fender of the door. Volkswagen gives us very specific gap dimensions. You also see up here where I outlined the red box that Volkswagen actually has a gap tool. I would encourage you that if you're a Volkswagen certified shop, or even if you're not certified and you do quite a few Volkswagens, to order one of these gap gauges. Why? So you can make sure that the gaps are in tolerance when you go to align them and deliver the vehicle back to the consumer. Now, what else is in this body repair manual? We also have body panel dimensions. Now, this would be the dimensions for your anything that you're replacing or repairing that it's a structural component. So, for example, if I was going to replace the rear body panel, there's very specific dimensions. You'll see here on the front frame rails on the left-hand side of your screen, there are very specific dimensions. So in this section, the body repair section, is where I'm going to find both my gap dimensions as well as my body structural dimensions. Now, here's what else Volkswagen had. Volkswagen gave us right here, you notice where it says special tools and workshop equipment required. Volkswagen tells us that if we want to repair these Volkswagens, they have very specific equipment that they want us to use. Now, you notice this equipment list does not say Carliner, Solette, Chief, Spinese, or anything like that. It has a very specific part number, and it's a Volkswagen part number. So while there may be specific equipment manufacturers whose equipment is approved by Volkswagen, Volkswagen doesn't put their name in here. So what you need to do is, if you want to know, do I have the right equipment to fix a Volkswagen? That information can be found at vw.snapon.com. Now let's look over here at section 10.2 within this area as well. It says the vehicle must be placed on a Volkswagen approved alignment system, and a vehicle alignment must be performed if there is visible damage to the body structure or if the body dimensions are different than those stated in the repair manual. You know, a lot of times I hear shops complain and they say the OEMs don't use strong enough words. They don't say must or required. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I don't think you're going to have that argument with Volkswagen. Volkswagen doesn't even hesitate at all. They have in here the words must. And not only does it say the word must one time, it says the word must twice. If you're going to fix Volkswagens, you must be using the equipment that they have approved. Let's talk a little bit more about Volkswagen's erWins. One of the things that Volkswagen erWin has that's really awesome is they have a lot of symbols that tell the technicians how to properly repair the vehicle. Now, keep in mind, I want to go back over this, right? See on this left-hand side where you see those red? Anything that is red is a hyperlink. So, for example, if I was to select on where it says 1.1 Tools, page 42, if I selected that, even if I downloaded the document to my desktop, I downloaded the PDF, if I select that, it's going to take me automatically to page 42. It's a great feature, right? You also see right here, there's a note in this left-hand box that says, due to the different types of steel material strength, only use welding equipment approved by Volkswagen, right? Now over here, you're going to see this metal plate right here that goes on the frame rail and the apron. You're going to see right here that that's color-coded. When you see a color coding like that, it's not telling you that that's made out of a specific type of metal. All it's doing is that's Volkswagen's attempt, and I must say it's a great attempt, just to identify for you what component they're talking about in this section. So it's just to make it so it looks more 3D, so it kind of jumps out at you. Now you're going to see a little symbol here with some arrows pointing to it, right? What that symbol means is you must remove the part at the original weld connection. So that means they want you to drill out those specific spot welds right there in that area, and that's what your technician needs to do. Now, again, we're going to tell you and show you what Volkswagen has different symbols and what those symbols mean here in just a few moments. So let's recap this page. Anything that's in red is a hyperlink. The hyperlinks don't work. You're using the wrong internet. You're not using the right internet browser. If you download this as a PDF, those hyperlinks will work. Number two is when you see something color coded like this, that's not telling you what that metal is made out of. It's just doing that so it has a 3D rendering for you to make it more visible for your technicians. Now, you also see right here, there are several other symbols used, right? Like, for example, on the right-hand side, this symbol right here, that means you need to have a resistance spot weld, and it needs to be in a straight line. If you look over here on the left-hand side, that little symbol means you need to clean the area. It means you need to remove any of the old undercoatings or seam sealers. Keeping in mind, the removal of any tar, grease, or petroleum-based product is a not included operation. Now, one of the other things you'll see that Volkswagen says right here under 1.3.1 is it said, fit the new part to vehicle standing on alignment bracket set. In Volkswagen's world, if you see the terminology alignment bracket set, they're referring to the frame equipment. Now, this is an example of some of the symbols that Volkswagen uses. You'll see that if you look here on the left-hand side, this means you use a drill. You got to drill out that spot weld. This right here looks like a little, wire wheel. That means you need to clean the area. Now, Volkswagen does use two different symbols for resistance spot welds. In some of the repair manuals, you'll see a dot with a straight line. That means you need to have a resistance spot weld. In other cases, you'll see that it looks like the tips of a spot welder. This symbol means a plug weld. So as you can see, Volkswagen tries to give you very clear direction throughout their own repair procedures for not only the type of tools or equipment you need to use, but also for very specific processes. And I will tell you, I found that this is very helpful in educating an insurer so you can get reimbursed for a proper and safe repair. Now, again, you'll see throughout this, some of the documents I'm sharing here, that Volkswagen uses these symbols a ton, right? This isn't just a once in a while. You'll see like in this diagram on the right-hand side, Volkswagen's got 3 different symbols going on here, right? Because there's 3 different types of repair procedures that I need to do, or specific procedures in order to do this. Now, in this case right here, you'll see where it shows that this is a continuous weld. One of the things I want to tell you is that Volkswagen does make the assumption that if you're using their own repair procedures, that you are what's called a heat management specialist, which means you know to weld a little bit, then move on to another spot, and then come back so it cools down. And so again, that's why Volkswagen has you click that OK at the beginning of erWin, that's saying, hey, when I access into this, I'm knowledgeable and I know how to do my job. Now, a couple other things we found in erWin is that they use some different terminology than maybe what you see in the estimating systems or what you might learn in a ICAR class. For example, Volkswagen does not call a frame rail. They call it a longitudinal member, right? Over here on the right-hand side, you'll see that there's a little symbol, and that means you have to apply adhesive. So let's talk about structural adhesives for a moment, right? Volkswagen does recognize the use of some structural adhesives in some instances. However, a couple things. Number one is they only recognize their adhesives. So that means if you're using some structural adhesives, you need to purchase it directly from Volkswagen, not anything generic. In addition, I will always encourage you to make sure that you, as an estimator or your technicians, check the expiration date on the bottom of the tubes. What we have learned by working with the team at Volkswagen is that Volkswagen will put expiration dates on their chemicals on the bottom of a can or on the bottom of a cartridge of like seam sealer or adhesive. So always check your adhesive expiration dates to make sure you didn't get something that maybe was on a shelf for a long time and didn't get utilized. You also see up here in the top box that Volkswagen also sometimes gives you very specific cure times, but also very specific parameters in regards to how long you have for the repairability if you use that adhesive. Now, people often ask me, well, if I fix a Volkswagen and I do 10 Volkswagens a week, why do I need to research some repair procedures every single time? I mean, I just fixed one of these cars last week. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the reason you need to do it is because things change. This is an example that was shared to us by our good friend Warren Barbie, right? This is a reinforcement that is only on vehicles sold in North America. And so if you were to have gone into this Volkswagen document on a certain date, this wasn't in there. Well, you know what? It's been revised and it's been revamped. And now this is actually made on vehicles that are sold. So this was an update, something where Volkswagen made a modification in the way that they sell vehicles, and they added this component. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, you need to research on repair procedures every single time, not just once in a while, or not because you did 10 last week. Now, keep in mind, if you have any questions, make sure you text them to Tracy at 571-458-0648. Now, let's talk about a couple other things here. Volkswagen is very specific in their own repair procedures about utilizing epoxy primer. You'll see in this instance right here in the body repair section, we're replacing a roof. And you'll look down here in this little red box, and it says, use 2K epoxy primer. So, ladies and gentlemen, Volkswagen wants you to use an epoxy primer, not an etch primer. So it's very important that you understand this is a procedure for corrosion protection that Volkswagen requires. Let's talk about structural adhesives. Again, Volkswagen provides very specific part numbers for structural adhesives. So while I am good friends with several of the chemical companies like 3M and Worth, ladies and gentlemen, while I love those guys, you don't need to be using structural adhesives from 3M or Worth. What you need to be doing is, if you get structural adhesives, you need to be purchasing it from your Volkswagen dealership. You will see right here that Volkswagen gives a very specific part number. In this case, it's D180-003M2. In addition, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to look down here where I'm moving my cursor. It says, after adhering, vehicle must stand on a level surface at room temperature at 60 degrees Fahrenheit for 8 to 10 hours. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't tell you the amount of times I go into shops and technicians go ahead and use this adhesive, and 2 hours later it's in the paint shop. Ladies and gentlemen, that vehicle can't be moved. When you use these structural adhesives, it needs to sit up and cure for 8 to 10 hours. In this specific instance, that vehicle needs to sit and it cannot be moved. This is really, really critical for you to make sure that your technicians know. Now, another thing we found is that Volkswagen is very big on corrosion protection. So in this instance, we see them in the body repair section talking about cavity wax. Well, cavity wax, Volkswagen refers to that as conservation wax. Conservation wax. So while we in the industry may use a generic term cavity wax, and you want to find this information in erWin and you're going to use the search feature, just type in conservation and you would see this pop up. Now, one of the things I want to share with you about cavity wax with Volkswagen is, again, they have a very specific part number. You'll see right here, it's AKD 476KD505. This is a very specific part number up here for the seam sealer. And then down here, we see AKR 321M154. That's a very specific part number for their cavity wax. Again, Volkswagen has tested these products and know that they have confidence in these products for the warranty they provide on their vehicles. Again, purchase them from your dealer. Make sure you check the expiration date and submit the invoice to the insurance carrier for reimbursement. Now, let's talk about a side panel or a partial section. So we found, like, for example, they don't call a quarter panel. They call it a side panel. One of the things that we saw right here is that when we went to the body repair manual, Volkswagen gives you very specific dimensions as to where this panel should be cut at and where it should be installed. You'll see right here, it says, for example, the dimension is going to be at 100 millimeters. So it's given me a very specific area that your technician can measure off, mark with, either use like a grease marker or a marker to mark it, or most technicians will put a piece of masking tape in that area. But Volkswagen has very specific dimensions that they want you to utilize as regards to where to replace their panels at. You also see right here that when I go to look up how to replace a quarter panel, you'll see Volkswagen says down here in this little red box, clean the flanged area on the wheel housing. It must be free of dust and grease. So again, ladies and gentlemen, when I go to remove the damaged quarter panel, or in this case, what do they call it again? Not a quarter panel, but they call it a side panel, right? When I go to remove this side panel, your technician will have to take and remove the undercoating or any seam sealer that's along the wheel well where the quarter panel welds up at. And Volkswagen's telling me I need to remove that first. Well, ladies and gentlemen, again, I want to remind you, Mitchell, CCC, and Autotex all say that the removal of any tar, grease, or petroleum-based product, if you remove it, it's a not included operation. All right, now what we did is we kind of gave you a little bit of an overview of the body repair section. Now we're going to take you into what's called the body repair, body collision repair section, right? Now again, we're not body repairs, but body repair, body collision repair. And you'll notice there's two different sections on this. So we're going to go to the first one. Here's the bomb that I want to drop on all of you. People always tell me, Mike, Volkswagen doesn't have a position statement on scanning. Well, you know what? You're right, they don't. And people say, well, why don't they? Because Volkswagen doesn't want you to become dependent on position statements. They want you researching and repair procedures on every single vehicle based on that VIN number and based on the vehicle options that are on that vehicle. So look at this Volkswagen right here. We go into this Volkswagen at erWin, and again, I want to back up. We're in the body collision repair section, okay? Hang on to your hats, ladies and gentlemen, because look what it says right here, 1.31. It says procedure for electronic control units after accident repairs. Every one of us are working on a vehicle that's been in an accident. This is important to us. And it says it is only necessary to install new electronic control units after an accident where at least one of the following conditions is present. Look at bullet point number 5. The functional check or the unit self-diagnosis procedure indicates the fault control unit defective. Ladies and gentlemen, the only way you can do a functional check is with a scan tool. So let me say this again. You might want to take a screenshot of this. You might want to write this down. When you go into Volkswagen's body collision repair section, 1.3.1, that's the section it's always going to be in. And it says, procedures after a vehicle's been in an accident. You must do a functional check. And that is where you use Volkswagen's factory scan tool, Otis, and you do an output or functionality test where it sends a signal out to components to see if it returns. And if it doesn't return, then it tells you, hey, there's a problem with this vehicle. That right there, ladies and gentlemen, you don't need a position statement. It's in Volkswagen's erWin procedures. But not only is it there, we're going to show you about 5 or 6 other places today where you can find the same type of information. Now look what else Volkswagen says here. When I go into the body collision repair section, it has section 1.8. It tells me how to inspect the seat belts. It says after every accident. It doesn't say after, an accident where the airbag deploys or an accident where, the quarter panel gets replaced. It says after every accident. Seatbelt systems must, again, there's that strong word must, be checked systematically. And it tells me how to inspect the seat belt. Check the belt strap, check the inertia reel, right? And look what it says right down here. If the customer refuses to have the damaged belts replaced, appropriate notes should be made. But check this out over here. Look what part of the checking process is on the right-hand side where this red arrow is at. It says, after you do these visual inspects, right? So I'm gonna do these visual inspections. Then I have to go over here to this next section, and it says, put the seatbelt on, accelerate the vehicle to 20 kilometers, and then carry out emergency braking with foot brake. If during the braking procedure, the belt is not locked by the locking mechanism, the seatbelt must be replaced. How many of you, ladies and gentlemen, are test driving the Volkswagen afterwards, getting it to 20 kilometers, and I'm not sure what that equates to in miles per hour, and actually checking to see if it does that? And you'll see right here, it says caution, for safety reasons, road tests should only be carried out on traffic-free, areas. But check this out. Look at module 1.8.4. It says, if the belt tongue fails only once to engage properly in the belt lock, you must do a minimum. Look right here. Carry out a minimum of 5 tests. Ladies and gentlemen, Volkswagen is saying you need to inspect the seatbelt a minimum of 5 times. I'm concerned that as a collision repair industry, we're not even inspecting it once. Ladies and gentlemen, this is critical to us. I don't think Volkswagen can give you any more clarity in regards to how to inspect their seatbelts. It's very, very detailed. Let's go to the next page of this body collision repair manual. It says repairs on vehicles with belt tensioners. So it says right here that anytime you're going to be doing any cutting or straightening, you should remove the seatbelt if it's in that vicinity. So ladies and gentlemen, if we're replacing a quarter panel or a center pillar or rocker, and your technician's just taking their seatbelts and kind of putting it out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, Volkswagen's saying you need to remove that. You need to remove the seatbelt if it's in any area of the vicinity of where you're hammering or doweling or pulling or banging or heating or welding. And not only that, ladies and gentlemen, Volkswagen says, look, if you're not sure which seatbelts have belt tensioners, look at this little chart on the right-hand side. It tells you whether it has a mechanical belt tensioner or an electrical belt or electric belt tensioner. So again, ladies and gentlemen, look up here at the top, right? It says if during cutting, straightening, and or bending operations, it says there is a requirement to make large jolts, and it tells you again the seat belts must be removed. Again, this will be a not included operation, ladies and gentlemen. Now let's go on down here and let's look at module 2.1. Again, we're still in the body collision repair manual, right? It says right here, diagnosis on accident vehicles. Ladies and gentlemen, Volkswagen has a really specific area here that says if you have a vehicle that's in an accident, there's some things we want you to look at. And look what it says here on the last bullet point. It says, finally, a thorough road test after repairs will give you the assurance that the vehicle is once again completely roadworthy. Ladies and gentlemen, it's saying you need to do a road test on this vehicle. Let's look over here at module 2.10. Again, this is on this very specific Volkswagen research. It tells you, in order to reduce the number of different parts, many service parts are only supplied as a basic version, and therefore you may have to transfer some parts over. And it says right here, it is recommended that the workshop make its own templates from damaged parts for such cases. So it's saying, hey, you may have to take and cut part of this other part out in order to make a template to drill a hole for a rear wiper. Again, ladies and gentlemen, if you have to do that, that's a not included operation. Let's look over here again. We see again under the body collision repair, some very specific cure times for their adhesives. It says 8 hours right here at 68 degrees Fahrenheit, or 20 minutes at 176 degrees Fahrenheit. Now people say, well, just put it in your spray booth and bake it for 176 degrees. Yeah, but let me understand this. You can't move that vehicle until it's cured. So if you're going to put it in your spray booth to bake it for 20 minutes at 176 degrees Fahrenheit to cure your adhesive, that means you have to have performed the entire repair in that specific area. We also look over here. Let's look at module 7.2, again, in the body collision repair. And what's it say? It says long-term body protection. We go down here, man, there is all kinds of cool stuff in here. It says weld primer must always be applied. Keep in mind, weld through primer labor materials is never included in any estimating systems. It says all weld seam areas must be primed, both inside and out, and you must reinstate the paintwork finish. What's it talking about, ladies and gentlemen? Adjacent panel damage, weld burn damage. You will replace a rear body panel, you're going to have adjacent panel and weld burn damage on both quarter panels, tail lamp pockets, the floor pan, both frame rails. So at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, Volkswagen very clearly here gives us documentation to prove to an insurance company that we must take and repair adjacent panels as well as refinish them, and that is a not included operation. Here's another cool thing we found in Volkswagen's erWins. Gosh, man, I hope you're getting as much value out of this as I do. Ladies and gentlemen, in Module 9.1, Volkswagen gives us a flow chart that tells us how we should approach writing the estimate. Yeah, they do. They actually give us a flow chart. So again, you might want to write this down, accident repairs. So if you go into Volkswagen's repair procedures, just go into search and type in the word accident. This document would pull up for you. And it says right here, damage diagnosis, remove surrounding parts. That's 100% tear down. And then it goes, itemize out all the parts you need. And then it says, repair, replace, make your decisions. And we go over this. And ladies and gentlemen, it's got some really cool stuff in here. Now, keep in mind, there were 2 body collision repair sections, right? This was not an error. This is not a duplicate. It's because Volkswagen's got so much content, they put into a second document. So now I go to body repair, body collision repair, the second section. Look what happens again. Same document, 1.3, function test for the ECM. So it says right here, electric control modules, connect electric welder ground connector directly to the piece to be welded. When doing so, be careful there are no electrically isolated parts located between the ground connection and welding location. What does this mean? It means we need to remove any electrical components in the weld zone area. So ladies and gentlemen, anytime you're welding a quarter panel on or a rear body panel or anything, you need to remove any electrical components within 12 to 18 inches, ladies and gentlemen. We got to remove like the airbag. We got to remove the airbag sensor if it's on the lock pillar, set back the wiring harness. And look what else it says right here, right? It says after you weld, you need to do a function test or OBD of the device to see if it shows a fault control module faulty. So again, another reference to having to use a scan tool. Look what else it says up here, ladies and gentlemen, right here, top of your page. If electronic components, for example, the ABS control modules are removed for repair work and then reinstalled, what do you got to do? You got to scan the vehicle. Ladies and gentlemen, there's so many references to scanning within Volkswagen's repair procedures. We have to ask ourselves, do we really need a position statement? All right, so now let's see what else we have in here. We see down here, it says right here again, and this is the second body.
Before you go on, I have a question for you. So I have a couple questions asking if it's just hail damage and not per se an accident, do they still need to scan?
In my personal opinion, this is Mike Anderson of Collision Advice, I absolutely believe you should, because when you go to remove like hail damage, you may remove a door trim panel. You may have to remove a door vapor barrier, and it could have an airbag pressure sensor in the door. You may have to remove a headlighter to get to a roof, and you may just remove certain components that get unplugged. And we have things like Bluetooth. So yes, anytime you're removing any type of interior trim components, we still need to do a scan to determine lost communication errors. However, we will make sure that your question gets submitted to Volkswagen, and I'm sure Volkswagen will get back to us for a response after our webinar. What was the next question, Tracy?
Perfect. I also have another question asking if they need to inspect seat belts, even if the vehicle was parked and unoccupied.
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, the pre-tensioners, and this is Mike Anderson of Collision Advice speaking, I'm not speaking on behalf of Volkswagen, I'm speaking on behalf of myself. So I think what we'll do is we'll take that question, we'll share it with the Volkswagen team, and we'll make sure we get back with them on a response. Any other questions, Tracy?
That's it for right now.
So listen, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for your questions. Keep in mind, some of these questions I'm able to answer is Mike Anderson of Collision Advice. But what we're going to do is any of your questions that we don't get to, or I don't know the answer for, we're going to forward those questions to the team at Volkswagen, and they're going to actually get back and provide us with the answers so we can actually get your questions answered, because these are great questions and we want safe and proper repairs. Now let's go down here again and look at this body collision repair, and this is in the section. Look at 2.4. It says new parts that are no longer accessible after the repair, for example, the side sill, which is a rocker, should have the corrosion protection installed on them before welding. Again, that means to apply weld-through primer. You also see right here that it says after painting the vehicle is when you should seal the cavities. So we should apply cavity wax after the vehicle is painted. Now, when we go to the second section, you'll see again another illustration of the different symbols that Volkswagen uses. You'll see some of these symbols tell you that you need to grind. Some of them say you need to drill. Some of them say you need to use a saw or a separation cut. Again, Volkswagen is really, really good with their different symbols. You'll see here also they have different symbols for the type of welds they need to use or the type of welder. So at the end of the day, Volkswagen is great with symbols, and we appreciate that. You'll see here also they have symbols, for example, for like how you should actually apply your adhesive. So look right here at number 3. This says right here, number 3, removing paint on hard to reach areas. If you look right here at number 4, it says, hey, Only sand these areas by hand. So what would be an example of something you only sand by hand? Well, for example, if Volkswagen has like some type of chip resisting material on an area, like the front leading edge of a hood, they don't want you to get aggressively with it with a machine sander, because what would happen is you might remove some of the coating. So again, Volkswagen may say only sand this by hand. So at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, Volkswagen again has some very good symbols. You'll see right here that anytime you see this symbol, that says you need to seal the cavities. So yes, you might say, well, that looks like a spray gun, but it's not. It's a pressure pot, and it's saying you need to apply cavity wax in these areas. If you see the symbol number 2, that means you need to apply some type of seam sealer. And again, Volkswagen always gives you very specific part numbers. So let's go ahead and look at this right here. Now let's look at this right here. It says module 5.1 or section 5.1. This is in the body collision repair section number 2. And look what it says right here. It says when repairing vehicles involved in collisions, again, that's what we do, damage to the body or suspension is not discovered. In some cases, this may cause serious subsequent damage later. In accidents that indicate a heavy load on the vehicle, the following components must be checked regardless of whether or not the axles were already checked. And it tells us several things that we need to do. And again, it references a test drive. Now, here's another cool document I really liked in this second body collision repair section. And that is that Volkswagen shows you if one of their vehicles is in an accident, these arrows show you how the inertia forces are designed to divert through this specific vehicle. So let's say we have a side impact on the center pillar. It's telling you that the inertia forces are made to transfer through the door intrusion beam and into the firewall. So I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, there were many times in my career that I wrote an estimate on a side impact hit, and I never R&I'd the cowl cover and wiper arms to inspect the firewall. Ladies and gentlemen, I would absolutely be doing that now on any Volkswagen, but specifically in this Volkswagen, because Volkswagen's saying if a vehicle gets hit on this side, the inertia forces are designed to divert through the vehicle. This is the way the engineers design the vehicle. So ladies and gentlemen, if you're writing an estimate on a Volkswagen, I absolutely encourage you. I would have to almost insist that you go to every single Volkswagen that you are writing an estimate on and figure out where you need to inspect for damage, because it may require you to remove some components on the vehicle to inspect for damage that you may not be aware of. You'll look right here, it says, look, on this front end collision, the inertia forces are made to drive up along the A-pillar into the roof, along the roof rail, but look right here, they're also made to transfer into where, like the dash intrusion beam's at. It says right here, the goal of the body design is for the front of the vehicle body to absorb as much of the energy as possible. If there's heavy damage to the front of the vehicle structure, the A-pillar transition area to the roof frame or sill must also be closely inspected. So ladies and gentlemen, we need to do that. It may require, you know what, R&Ing like the door weather strip to inspect everything. It may require removing a fender. If I have a front end hit and maybe the fender just got damaged, I may have to remove the fender in order to inspect this area. Look what it says here on this right side. It says when evaluating damage in the rear, carefully inspect to see if there's any metal distortion in the luggage compartment floor area. So it says due to the way this vehicle is designed, we need you to do this. So ladies and gentlemen, it's critical that we research how the inertia forces are intended to be diverted throughout a vehicle on the specific Volkswagen you're writing an estimate on. Now, another thing we found in this section was looking down here at 5.5.2. It says, due to the higher application of force, normal panels that are welded with high-strength panels are strained more. In order to prevent normal parts from yielding or tearing, an additional anchorage must be provided. Oh my gosh, ladies and gentlemen, I can't tell you how many shops I've gone into, and I see that people are taking a Volkswagen and they're tying it down and anchoring it by the pinch welds. Ladies and gentlemen, that is absolutely an inaccurate repair. It's an incorrect repair. And Volkswagen is saying, look, due to the way that we design our vehicles and how strong they are, you may have to anchor this vehicle in multiple different types of points. So ladies and gentlemen, make sure that you research how to anchor a Volkswagen to a frame machine or a bench or whatever the case may be, because it's very, very specific. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're using those 2 hours set up a measure, throw that out the window, ladies and gentlemen, because this specific Volkswagen may require to be anchored in anywhere from 4 to 6 locations. In addition, look at the right-hand side. It says 5.5.4. It says contact corrosion may occur if unsuitable connecting elements such as bolts, nuts, washers, etc. are used. And it says that their hardware has a special surface coating on it so it doesn't corrode. I would encourage you, if you're writing any estimate on a mechanical component, specifically suspension, a lot of times these nuts and bolts and fasteners on suspension have a coating on them to keep them from corroding during inclement weather, like sand, salt, and snow during the inclement weather times. And these are one-time use parts, because once you go and break the coating on it, it's going to actually start to corrode. So we need to make sure we research this within erWin. Now let's look right here again. It says contact corrosion may occur if unsuitable connecting elements, bolts, nuts, washers, etc. are used. For this reason, only fasteners with a special surface coating are installed. Ladies and gentlemen, if your technicians are going to your nut and bolt bin just to get some hardware out, and they say, well, I'll just get this bolt that we have in stock, or this washer, or whatever the case may be, ladies and gentlemen, that's a mistake. Volkswagen makes very specific hardware for their vehicles that have very specific coating on them. If you know that a fender or door, whatever the case may be, or a bumper needs a specific nut, bolt, fastener, clip, you need to be ordering that from your Volkswagen dealership. Why? Because these parts have been treated by Volkswagen for their parts. All right, let's look right here again. Seat belts. Again, you'll see right here in the second body collision repair section, again, it has very specific procedures for how we must inspect the seat belts. And again, you'll look right here, the warning, Volkswagen puts in a warning, it says, before beginning separation work, straightening work, and/or dent removal, remove mechanically activated belt tensioners without load detection, right? So it's telling us we can't be doing any hammering and straightening and beating and banging around these things, or cutting or drilling or grinding. We need to remove these components, and that's a not included operation. Let's talk about test welds. One of the things that Volkswagen has in this second body collision repair section is it says test button weld. For the necessary button weld diameter, determine the panel pairing based on the manufacturer specifications and check with test panels. And they actually tell us how to check the test welds. It says check all spot weld connections 100% with a chisel test. And they go down here and give us very specific procedures on how to perform a destructive test weld. Keep it in mind, ladies and gentlemen, setting up and performing destructive test welds is a not included operation. But more importantly, are your technicians doing it? It's not about getting paid for it. It's about, are your technicians doing it? And if so, are you taking photos of that test weld, and are you keeping it on file so that something should ever happen, you have the documentation to protect yourself? So again, Volkswagen gives us very specific parameters as to when to conduct destructive test welds and how to conduct a destructive test weld. And again, we found this in the body collision repair section, the second one. You also look right here. Let's talk about body filler, right? It's not uncommon for body shops to fix dents in panels. Well, look what Volkswagen says right here under body filler. Note, only approved body filler materials may be used. It says we should only be using body filler that we have purchased through Volkswagen. Now, I'm going to tell you, I've used a lot of body fillers in my time, and I had the opportunity recently to be at the Volkswagen Training Center, and I got the opportunity with Warren Barbie to actually interact and utilize some of this body filler. Man, I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it actually sands great, and it's a really good filler. So I would encourage you that if you're repairing a Volkswagen, understand Volkswagen has a very specific part number for this, and you can order it from your dealership. So again, ladies and gentlemen, it gives you also an invoice to provide to the insurance companies. And look over here, it says note, only approved body filler materials may be used, right? So again, Volkswagen has specific body filler they want to use on their components. Now, let's go back over here and let's look at section 11 on corrosion protection. It says the corrosion protection used in this production is described in the general and vehicle specific paint manual. So what does that mean? If you're going to look for information on how to restore corrosion protection on a Volkswagen, you will not find it in the body collision repair section. Let me say that again. If you want to know anything about corrosion protection, seam sealer, weld-through primer, undercoating, gravel guard, chip guard, anything like that at all, you're not going to find it in the body repair manual. You will find it in the paint manual. So please understand that, okay? You also see right here, it says caution, function components such as brake and exhaust systems may not be sprayed. It says, look, if you're putting sprayable seam seal or undercoating on there, don't get it on any of these components. So if your technician can't properly protect it during the application of these materials, then what you need to do is you need to make sure they remove it during 100% disassembly. Now, here's some other things Volkswagen has, and we're going to talk about this, all right? So a lot of people will ask us, well, Mike, can I repair a bumper cover on a Volkswagen? Can I repair a bumper cover on a Volkswagen? You know what? It depends. Now, there's two different areas you're going to find repair precautions in regards to Volkswagen bumper covers. One is you will find it under the plastic repair section in the body collision repair manual. The other area you will find that is going to be in the paint manual, and I'm going to show that to you in a moment. Now you'll see right here what Volkswagen says in section 12, plastic repair. It says plastic components with a structured surface can be serviced. That means repaired. However, the quality standard of the surface will not be the same. So it's saying, you know what? Yeah, go ahead and repair it, have at it, but it's not going to be the same. In addition, up here it says warning, do not repair safety related components whose function can no longer be guaranteed after servicing. For example, those that absorb impact. And then Volkswagen has some very specific requirements as regards to the dimensions of how much damage can or cannot be repaired. Now let's go into the paint general information section. Now you're going to note right here, there's a paint area that I can look at, a paint document, and then there's paint general information. The one we're going to look at first is the paint general administration. Now again, ladies and gentlemen, I know this webinar is running a little bit long. If you have to log off, it will be recorded and sent to you, but I'm hoping you're going to hang in here with us. All right, now we go into the paint section, paint general information. One of the things I saw right here that got my attention was it said that their primer is not UV and acid resistant. So it says, for example, when you get OEM primer on a part, like I buy a new hood, a new fender, a new door, it's saying, look, this primer is not UV resistant. So it's saying if it's going to be exposed to any UV rays at all, you need to paint the opposite side of it. So for example, if I'm going to paint a fender and I know that there's parts of that underside of that fender that are going to be exposed to any, gravel or road chipping or anything like that, it's saying I need to paint the opposite side, right? So keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, in the estimating systems, paint times are for one side and one side only. So always ask yourself, do I need to paint the top and the bottom or the inner or the outer? Now here's another thing we saw in Volkswagen's paint general section. Now check this out, right? Remember I told you, anything in regards to corrosion protection is going to be under the paint manual. Anything under the corrosion protection section is going to fall under the paint manual, not the body manual. Look at this right here. It says, note, when repairing, the seam sealant is to be returned to replicate stock visual appearance and layer thickness. It's saying, look, if you got to apply any seam sealer, we at Volkswagen want it to match our factory appearance. Ladies and gentlemen, the additional labor to seam seal a panel does not include additional labor required to match the OEM texture or appearance. And Volkswagen's telling us right here, look, anytime you apply seam sealer, we're expecting it to match our factory seam sealer. And ladies and gentlemen, keep in mind, the additional labor to apply seam sealer or gravel guard in order to match the texture is a not included section. Let's look over here at module 2.5, again in the paint general information section. It says the underbody and stone chip protection structure must be restored back to its original layer strength and appearance. Again, it says, look, if you're going to put gravel guard on there, we're expecting it to match. So let's say, for example, that CCC gives you 4/10 to gravel guard a fender, or Mitchell gives you 5/10 to gravel guard a rocker. That labor time does not include the additional labor to match the OEM texture or appearance. Ladies and gentlemen, Volkswagen's telling us it needs to match, and that's not included. Let's also look over here as we go through the gravel guard, chip guard area and section of this. Look what it says over here. It says in some cases, after you apply it, you may have to smoothen the texture. You may have to actually go and sand the texture so it doesn't look too aggressive. So there may be a lot of labor required for your technicians. Now let's go down here and let's look right here. Let's talk about cavity sealant. So it says, look, anytime you have a hood, the hood should be seam sealed along these outer edges. Now let me tell you something right now. I recently purchased an aftermarket hood for a Volkswagen. I then recently took and purchased an OEM hood for a Volkswagen. So two part numbers, both for the same Volkswagen. One of the things we found with the aftermarket part was that the seam sealer along the inside edge of the hood wasn't even covering up the seam. So let me say that again, right? When we got the factory hood, it had a very nice bead that went all around the seam of the hood where the skin covered over the frame. When we got the aftermarket hood and we compared the two, the aftermarket hood, they had put seam sealer on there, but they actually missed the seam. And the purpose of the seam sealer is to coat the two seams. So again, Volkswagen's telling us here, we have very specific areas that we want our fenders and doors actually sealed, right? And it says right here, look at the fender. The fender must be completely coated from the inside. So it's saying, look, make sure you paint the back side of the fender, not just the outside. It also tells you over here that doors need to be completely coated from the inside, which means you need to actually take and make sure that they're seam sealed all the down here. So again, ladies and gentlemen, very specific requirements from Volkswagen. Now, again, we're in the paint section, all right? Now check this out, because we're going to go back to scanning here, right? We're in the paint general section. Look at this. Volkswagen tells us that they have very specific mill thicknesses for their bumper covers as well as their parking sensors. Look at this right here. It says, look, maximum mill thickness. Ladies and gentlemen, if you get a bumper cover that's been painted multiple times, you may need a new bumper cover, because Volkswagen says for these parking aid sensors, we have very specific mill thicknesses. In addition, look what it says right here. It says parking aid sensor. The following parameters must be met. Again, there's that word must be met when painting to avoid malfunctions in the parking aid sensor. And it says right here, function test. Connect to the vehicle diagnostic tester and check the function. Oh my gosh, ladies and gentlemen, how many times have you R&I'd a bumper cover that had a parking sensor in it? Maybe you just R&I'd it. You didn't even fix the bumper. Well, what's Volkswagen saying here? Volkswagen's saying, look, if you go and remove this component, you need to connect it to a vehicle diagnostic tester and to a function test. We need to make sure it's working. Ladies and gentlemen, how do you do a function test? A scan tool. Look what else it says down here. It says no paint is permitted in this area. So it's saying this sensor can't be painted. Let's go up here to the right-hand side, adaptive cruise control, ACC. Look what it says. It says on vehicles with ACC, adaptive cruise control, the trim in the right cover section of the front bumper must not be painted. Must not. So if it's damaged and nicked, guess what you got to do, ladies and gentlemen? You got to replace it. Or you know what else, ladies and gentlemen? If you're going to paint that area, you need to remove it, because if any overspray gets on it, it could cause a problem. Now, here's what I'm going to show you, right? This is really important. You have a bumper cover comes into your shop, has minor damage to it. It's got to be fixed. First thing you need to do as an estimator is you got to go to Paint General Information. Why? Because that's where it's going to tell you if or if not, and when and where that bumper cover can be repaired. So I'm writing an estimate on this Volkswagen, right? I go to Paint General Information, and I go right here to this section, bumper cover painting instructions and the lane change resistant control. And what Volkswagen tells me is, look, you cannot repair this bumper within 25 centimeters of where this sensor's at. So they're very specific procedures, right? So ladies and gentlemen, again, if it was nicked right up here by where it goes up by the wheel, you know what, if it's a little nick or scrape, I can repair that. But ladies and gentlemen, if it's damaged in this area, I can't repair it, ladies and gentlemen. I got to replace it. Why? Because if you put filler or primer on there and things of that nature, it can actually affect the ability for this bumper cover's lane change assistance control module to work properly. So again, let's back up. You're an estimator, car comes in, rear bumper cover is damaged. First thing you're going to do is go to Paint General Information. You're going to go right to this section. And again, keep in mind, I love the search feature in Volkswagen. Just type in the word bumper cover. It's going to take you right to this, right? And you're going to find out if that bumper cover can be repaired or does it need to be replaced. And my concern for our industry, ladies and gentlemen, is that we're repairing bumper covers that we should have been replacing. Now over here, let's look at cavity wax. Again, they don't call it cavity wax. They call it conservation wax, but in the paint section, because all corrosion protection items are in the paint section, you'll look right here, it gives us specific part numbers for the cavity wax. There's specific part numbers for any of the seam sealers we're going to use. So ladies and gentlemen, Volkswagen sells all these materials directly through their dealerships. And why do we need to use the process? So here's what I was thinking, right? I was thinking to myself when I read this, I'm like, okay, so, you know, Volkswagen's just trying to sell more parts, right? That's why they got their own seam sealer and cavity wax in there. They're just trying to sell more parts. And just as I was telling myself that, I got to apologize to Volkswagen, right? Because I go to the next section and it tells me right here, the long-term underbody protection is suitable for dampening the sound of luggage compartments, hoods, wheel housings. You know what? Volkswagen's are trying to sell more parts, ladies and gentlemen. So Volkswagen, I apologize to you. Why do they have specific part numbers? Because the product they want you to use has a dual purpose. It's both used for undercoating as well as sound dampening features, right? So at the end of the day, they don't want you to use this product because they're trying to sell more parts. They want to use this product because of the fact that it has a dual purpose. Not only does this material you're going to apply help to undercoat the vehicle, but it's also there to make sure it's a sound dampening to, you know, keep down from road noise. So that's why Volkswagen wants you to use it. This is a very specific part number of a product that they've approved and tested that will make a Volkswagen perform and sound just like it did before the accident. You'll see here again, you'll see they give us a very specific part number on the stone chip materials that they're going to use. Again, Volkswagen gives you tons of part numbers in here. You have no excuse for not being able to use the right part at the right time. Now look what else. So another reason, all right, so you say, well, why do I got to buy my cavity wax from them? Well, here's why. Look at this page right here. It says this material, this product number right here, D316, D38A2. It says down here, this product can also be used to treat chassis parts such as axles, wheels, suspensions, and springs, because these parts become gray with age and are often the first to be affected by rust. The treatment refreshes the color, which considerably improves the optimal appearance. At the same time, the parts are protected against corrosion, because Volkswagen doesn't want you to use just any cavity wax. They want to use the cavity wax that they have tested, because they're saying it can and should be applied to some of your suspension components. Ladies and gentlemen, I got to tell you, I've written a ton of estimates, and I figured to apply corrosion protection on the inside of the door or quarter panel or rocker. But this is a case where Volkswagen's saying, look, we want you to apply this Cosmoline-based product to our suspension components so they don't corrode. And not only that, but Volkswagen also gives us very specific PSI, very specific air pressure at which we should apply this material. And that's even more important, right? Because using the right air pressure ensures that it travels the distance it needs to up inside of a rocker cavity or a frame rail. Now let's go to the paint section. So we just looked at the paint general section. Now let's go into the paint section, right? We go to the paint section, and just like in the body section, paint has a lot of symbols. You'll see right here, they have a symbol that says you should sand it by hand. Here's a symbol that says this is when you need to apply seam sealer. And, or you know what, this symbol tells me that I need to find a specific type of seam sealer. And again, you'll see several symbols here that are utilized in Volkswagen's erWin. You'll see right here, it tells me on the hood that there's a specific area that they want me to paint this hood, right? It says only the colored areas will be painted with base paint. So it's saying, look, when you go to paint this hood, you need to make sure that you paint this outer area. But look what Volkswagen says. They're saying we also want to make sure that you apply paint to where the hood prop rod goes. Why is that? Because if it gets chipped, they don't want it to corrode. Now, one of the things I did see when I was going through Volkswagen's erWin is I saw right here where they used the word lacquer. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like old school. And then I got the opportunity to talk to Warren Barbie at their training center. And what I understood is that this is the word that the German translators use when they translate it to English, is that the word lacquer is their term for clear coat. You'll see also down here that Volkswagen in the paint section, it tells us there are very specific areas that they actually apply like chip resistant primer, right? On the leading edge of the hood, on the back leading edges of the doors, along the quarter panel. So ladies and gentlemen, are you using the right primer or the right additive from your paint manufacturer to ensure these areas don't get chipped? You also see right here, we look again at seam sealer, right? Keep in mind again, ladies and gentlemen, seam sealer, you know, Volkswagen has some very specific requirements. It says when repairing, the seam sealant is to be returned to replicate the visual appearance and layer thickness. The other thing I liked about Volkswagen is Volkswagen tells me how much seam sealer I'm going to need. One of the challenges you have with an insurance company is they say, well, how do I know you need the whole tube? Well, here's why, because Volkswagen tells you, I need an 8mm by 2mm area seam sealed. So Volkswagen gives you very specific requirements that tells you the amount of seam seal that's needed. So that makes it easier for me to build. You'll see right here again, they tell me that seam sealer is applied on this hood and where it's applied at. You'll see over here again on a door, it's telling me very specific dimensions for how much seam sealer I need. 100mm in this area, 140mm. What more documentation you need? Volkswagen gives me the part number of the seam sealer I need, and Volkswagen tells me exactly quantity, how much seam sealer I'm going to need. All makes it easy for us to get paid, ladies and gentlemen. So again, it also, Volkswagen shows us, again, in the paint section, tells us where cavity wax should be applied, where seam sealer should be applied. You'll see right here, they show us that seam sealer should be on the bottom of the door. Let's talk about another section. So ladies and gentlemen, maybe you go into repair manual and you decide, you know what, I went into the body repair manual, but let me look at another section, which is the electrical section. So what I did is I went to repair manual, I went to category 2. Remember, category 2, selected electrical system. And one of the things I saw in there, it said communication. So I go to the communication module, and you know what I find in that section? It tells me how to recode the radio, because it says me if I screw up trying to recode the radio too many times, you're gonna have to go to the dealership. So there's a very specific procedure on how to recode the radio. And we know, ladies and gentlemen, we all know that when we actually disconnect batteries, sometimes we got to recode the radio. Look right here in the electrical. So I'm going to go back. I went to the communication section under electrical system. Stay with me now. Electrical system, I go to communication, and under there, look what it tells me. Rear view camera. It says right here, OBD, refer to vehicle diagnostic tester. Calibrations are necessary. It tells me over here that if I go and R&I this deck lid handle for paint, well, you know what? It tells me there's a camera in there. I now have to use a scan tool to go back and recalibrate these, ladies and gentlemen. So there's multiple instances where a scan tool is recommended, or required, I should say, mandatory in Volkswagen's erWin. Let's look down here at this one right here. It also tells us about control module for emergency call module. Ladies and gentlemen, are you researching this? You know, we need to make sure, is there a certain instance when we need to disable this before we begin repairs? All of this is going to be found under the communication tab of the Volkswagen OEM repair procedures. Now, here's another thing I saw, right? When I went into the Volkswagen repair manual, I saw something that said generic scan tool. I'm like, what in the world is that, right? Now, that was under the service information tab right here, right? So you'll see right here, I went to repair manual, I went to engine, and it's a generic scan tool. Well, when I went into there, I found there are some other things that it was in here. It tells me, look, ladies and gentlemen, there's certain procedures. You need to make sure that you drain the fuel before you do it and empty the fuel tank. Keep in mind, if you have to empty a fuel tank, that's a not included operation. Why? Because one vehicle might have 10 gallons of gas, another one might have 5, and one might have 25 gallons of gas. And because there's a variable there on the amount of gas, that would be a not included operation. You'll see right here that Volkswagen also says in the generic scan tool section, electrical connectors that have been disconnected must be kept dry. That means you need to protect them. Goes over here and tells us the high voltage system must be de-energized by a high voltage technician prior to beginning work. And it actually tells you, look, if you're going to be doing any welding, you need to de-energize the high voltage system. Ladies and gentlemen, that's important for us to know, ladies and gentlemen. So you'll see that Volkswagen, you may want to go into the generic scan tool section, because I know what you're thinking. Generic scan tool means aftermarket scan tool. No, that's not what it means. It's telling you things that are electrical you need to be concerned with when you're doing repairs. You'll notice here that it also tells us that when you're doing some general work, if it's a high voltage vehicle, it's saying make sure you look for any paint precautions on that vehicle, which is really, really critical to us as well. Now, here's another thing I liked under the generic scan tool section, right? Generic scan tool is not referring to an aftermarket scan tool. Generic scan tool means this is some generic or general information we're telling you about how to utilize our factory scan tool. Notice. You look right here, that gives us a nice flow chart on how to use their factory scan tool for doing diagnostic work. It says connect the scan tool, check for any stored or related DTCs. And then what it says down here is perform the diagnostic procedure for that DTC. Ladies and gentlemen, a lot of times people will ask me, well, Mike, how much should I charge to scan a vehicle? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to tell you what to charge, but what I will tell you is your diagnosis process should not be included in your scan time. Because if a vehicle has 1 DTC versus 20 DTCs, it's going to take me a lot longer to do the research on 20 DTCs than it is 1 DTC. So I would encourage you to itemize that separately. You also see right here, now check this out, 3.2 readiness code. You might want to write that down, readiness code. It says readiness code description. If a malfunction is recognized during the drive cycle, it will be stored in the DTC memory. You notice here, ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't say when a malfunction occurs, we're going to have a dash light come on. It doesn't say that. It says when a malfunction occurs, restore DTC. Doesn't say a dash light comes on. You also look down here and you'll see that when Volkswagen, on some of their calibrations and some of their scanning and diagnosis procedures, they have very specific test drive requirements. You see right here, it says driving profile takes approximately 60 to 90 minutes at 50 to 70 miles per hour. So ladies and gentlemen, understand that it's not just about scanning. It's also about doing the test drive at a very specific distance at a very specific speed. And you'll find this under the generic scan tool section. Here's another thing I like about using a Volkswagen factory scan tool is Volkswagen says right here, diagnostic mode. Volkswagens have what's called freeze frame data, right? So if you go to scan a Volkswagen using a factory scan tool, again, the Otis, what it does is they actually have freeze frame data. It tells you the exact date, time, and mileage that the fault code occurred. And you'll see right here, it also can tell you the amount of distance that the vehicle was driven with the dash light on, or how many times the key has been turned on or off. Ladies and gentlemen, capturing this freeze frame data is critical to submitting to an insurance company to prove that what you're fixing was a result of the accident or the repair process. Now, a lot of times we talk about pre-scans, but let's see what Volkswagen has to say about post-scans. Look right here. This says on the adaptive cruise control, calibration, right? It says special tools and workshop equipment required. And it says prior to calibrating the adaptive cruise control, check the event memory and correct any malfunctions. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the only way I can check event memory and correct any malfunctions is I must use a scan tool. So it's saying, look, after you do a repair, before you go to calibrate the cruise control, you need to scan the vehicle. You know, I always got somebody in one of my classes that says, well, I never see the OEM say you got to use their factory scan tools. Well, look what Volkswagen says right here. The adaptive cruise control calibration may only be set using a Volkswagen Audi approved alignment tester and adjusting device. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know of any other scan tool that Volkswagen approves other than their own factory. And look what else it says. It says, I need to calibrate the adaptive cruise control if any of these things happen. The front bumper carrier was removed and installed. The front bumper carrier was loosened or moved. Ladies and gentlemen, how many times have you just loosened the bumper to get a fender off? Well, if you loosened it, you got to go back and calibrate the adaptive cruise control. And before I can calibrate the adaptive cruise control, ladies and gentlemen, I got to check for any malfunctions. You also see over here that Volkswagen says in some of these instances, there are mandatory replacement parts. Volkswagen does not have a symbol that says this symbol means these parts must be replaced. The way Volkswagen identifies for you one-time use parts is they will generally put a caution box in here, and it will tell you this procedure contains mandatory replacement parts. So always make sure that you look for that. You also see right here that Volkswagen says when we say safety precautions when working with pyrotechnic components, it says warning. So warning is a pretty serious thing. It says the pyrotechnic components may be checked only when they are installed and with a vehicle diagnostic tester approved by the vehicle manufacturer. So everybody that tells me aftermarket scan tools are okay, I got to disagree with you, ladies and gentlemen, because right here, Volkswagen's telling me I got to use a scan tool that's been approved by them. And the only scan tool Volkswagen approves is their factory scan tool. Now, we're going to try to wrap this up for you here in the next 7 to 10 minutes. One of the other things I found was when you log into erWin, you're going to go to where it says My Account. When you go to where it says My Account, one of the things that you're going to see, ladies and gentlemen, is you're going to see where it says Newsletter. Click on that option where it says Newsletter. When you click on that option where it says Newsletter, what it's going to do is it's going to open up something for you called the erWin Newsletter. Now, this is something I think is pretty new with Volkswagen because I only saw that they only had 2 issues in there, and one of those issues is the most recent issue. So this was an erWin newsletter, and it kind of lets you know if anything new is going on in regards to erWin or their factory scan tools or whatever. So I would encourage you that, every month when you log into erWin, at least once a month, go to this newsletter and download this. And here's the other thing that's cool, right, is even if you don't subscribe to erWin, it actually gives you the ability to view the newsletter. You'll also see right here that in this newsletter, Volkswagen shares some cool things with us. Like, if you're going to use their software on Otis, it tells you there's some very specific hardware requirements. So again, and it also helps you to understand if you're using the most recent version. So what I did was when I clicked on this subscription, again, this erWin newsletter, so I would encourage everybody to understand, you can register at erWin for free. There's no charge to register for erWin. There's a charge to access the repair information, but there's no charge to register for erWin. I would encourage you to register for erWin, and once you do that, it gives you access to this newsletter, right? You'll see right here it says an erWin subscription, which provides access to factory repair procedures, wiring diagrams, and TSBs, is also available for purchase. And now you can see exactly what your subscription fees are if you decide to use the Volkswagen software for scanning. You'll see it's $750 a year for single brand or $1,500 a year for dual brand. And again, just like Volkswagen does, they make it easy. They give you step-by-step on how to go through and register for this. Now, the other thing that I liked about this erWin newsletter, and this was the July through August 2018, is it tells you what is the certificate on what you're using, right, on your scan tool, right? And it tells you if the certificate you're using is the most recent update of the most recent version. Because if it's not, you're not going to be able to do any coding past that date. So it's really critical that you make sure you always have the most recent version. Now, we have a good friend of ours from the team of Volkswagen who's actually on the call with us today, and that is and one of the things that he did was he actually was sharing with me, Travis did, about a survey that Volkswagen recently did. So Travis, I don't know if you're able to chime in here for us or not as we wrap this up, sir, but could you share with us a little bit with us, sir, about the survey that you guys conducted?
Yeah, sure, Mike. We sent out a survey about 6 months ago, just asking maybe 8 or 9 general questions, and we highlighted 3 here for you. And the first one was, which subscription do you typically purchase? And it was kind of split, I guess, between year and daily. And then the second question was, would you be interested in a 3-day or weekly subscription? And actually, based on this one, by the end of the year, we're also going to have a 3-day subscription for erWin available. So right now you can buy 1 day, 1 month, or 1 year, but soon we'll have a 3-day, which gives you a little bit more time, and the cost of that will be $60. And then we had the last survey question, just a simple, how satisfied are you with the product? And we were pretty satisfied with the results.
Well, awesome. And then I think here, if I go to the next slide, I think you had a little bit more data. Can you share some of this with us, sir?
Yeah, actually, this prompted a change too. We sent out the survey, but only got about a 10% reply or survey responses. So The problem is currently in erWin, you can't go in if you have an old email address with your account, you can't change it. That too will be changed by the end of the year. But if you are signed up for erWin and your email has changed, just simply contact us at techinfo@vw.com and we'll change that for you right away.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, sir. So a couple other things as we wrap this up, and I appreciate everybody's patience today. What do you do if you can't find what you're looking for? Well, I want to just tip my hat to the team at Volkswagen. Let's say you go into erWin and you just can't find what you're looking for, and you're just frustrated as heck, right? Because we all have those days. Volkswagen allows you to reach out to them directly, right? So, and now again, keep in mind, they want you to exhaust the repair manuals first. Do your best to try to find it because, they want to be getting tens of thousands of emails. But if you can't, you actually have a way to reach out to Volkswagen directly. And that email address is collision@vw.com. Again, I think it's pretty easy to remember, right? collision@vw.com. So if you ever can't find what you're looking for after you've exhausted your complete research of the repair manuals in erWin, feel free to reach out to Volkswagen and they will help you. Now, one other thing is if you're in erWin, you can go up to where it says About erWin and you will see a Contact tab. If you go to the Contact tab, again, that's under the About erWin section, and you go to where it says Support Form, what it will do is it will also allow you to submit an email directly to Volkswagen. So you'll see right here, I have my username and password in. I'm sorry, username and email address, and you select your category like repair manual, whatever it is, and you can actually submit a question directly to Volkswagen and get a reply back to them. So as we try to wrap this up, again, we just got one or two other things to show you, so please bear with us. We'd like to do one more survey for you. Do you feel more comfortable with your ability to navigate the Volkswagen erWin website based on the webinar you attended today? Yes, no, or you didn't learn anything new? So we're going to go ahead and launch our poll right now. And so if everyone would please take this survey. Looks like right now only 2% of you have voted. So really, please, ladies and gentlemen, please vote so we know that Volkswagen will know that you found this webinar worthwhile because they supported us so greatly in doing this webinar. So right now it looks like about 40% of the attendees have voted. We're at a 98% yes and 99% yes and 1% no. So ladies and gentlemen, let's keep those votes coming in. We want to make sure we give Volkswagen good feedback for their support of serving our industry on this free webinar. So Tracy, we're going to go ahead and shut the poll down now. It looks like 98% of the attendees said yes and 2% no. For those of you, the 2% that said you didn't really get any more comfortable, I want you to feel free to reach out to me personally, Mike Anderson, and I will personally do a webinar for you. So before we wrap this up, we knew that some shops would have questions about becoming a Volkswagen certified shop. First of all, you would want to go to this website, www.vwccrf.com. Again, vwccrf.com. Now, when you go to this website, you're going to see right here where it says View Our Standards. If you select that, it's automatically going to take you to all of Volkswagen's position statements, which is a great resource. One of my favorite ones is that Volkswagen says you must extend clear to the natural breaking point. It also will help you to understand what frame equipment, as well as welders and rivet guns, etc., that Volkswagen has approved. The next thing you can do is if you click on one of those documents, you'll see again that Volkswagen gives you very specific part numbers for what equipment is approved for them. They don't specify equipment like Select, Carolina, ProSpot, etc. They give you the part numbers, and again, through the Snap-on website is how you can find out what those part numbers apply to. Now, what are the goals of the Volkswagen certification program? The goals of the CCRF program is puts rigorously tested Volkswagen AG repair standards into operation. That means they want you following the OEM repair procedures. They want you going to erWin, no third-party software. Number two is, one of the goals of Volkswagen is to ensure market coverage. They want to make sure they have enough shops in the United States of America as well as Canada to ensure that if a Volkswagen owner is in an accident, they can get their vehicle repaired at a Volkswagen certified collision repair facility. The scope is it's offered to all dealer-owned and independent body shops as long as you're sponsored by a Volkswagen dealership. So again, unlike some OEM certifications, you do not have to be a dealership shop. You can be an independent shop and you can become Volkswagen certified. So how do you do that? If you'd like to get more information about Volkswagen certification program, again, speak to your dealer or contact Volkswagen at collision@vw.com. So in summary, ladies and gentlemen, we hope that you found value in today's webinar. There were a lot of things we didn't even get to cover. There's a lot more information on Volkswagen's erWin website, and it's going to be up to you, the collision repairer, to go there and navigate it and learn more. Remember, repetition is key. I will also tell you that on the erWin website, there's a lot of information about how to use their factory scan tools, Otis. We didn't even get into that today, but lots of great information. Now, our next webinar is going to be on October 18th at 2 p.m., and that will be with John Lancaster and the team at Subaru. So, ladies and gentlemen, remember our goal. Our goal is learn to research, learn to use the OEM repair procedures, and then use the OEM repair procedures, ladies and gentlemen, to learn to perform safe and proper repairs. We'd like to give a great shout out to our friends at Volkswagen for all their support in helping us to build the content and allowing us access to the erWin website. So, Tracy, do we have any other questions before we sign off today? And if not, we'll get to them after the webinar. Then, ladies and gentlemen, go ahead, Tracy.
Well, we just have a couple questions. Like, does Audi's website work the same way as Volkswagen's?
Yes, so today's webinar was specifically for Volkswagen, that Audi does use erWin, and your navigation procedures would primarily work about the same. That is correct.
Okay, and the ELSA Pro platform for dealers works the same way as well?
That is correct. So it looks like we're out of time for questions, Tracy, but what we'll do is any other questions that were submitted, we will forward those to the team at Volkswagen and get back to you. We know these webinars are long. We hope, ladies and gentlemen, you found value in it. Again, a big shout out to Volkswagen and a special shout out to my partner and friend, Tracy Dombrowski, for helping us to build the content. Ladies and gentlemen, make it a great rest of your day, and thanks for joining us.